Welcome back, everyone. This week we're going to do Parshas Lech Lecha, and Lech Lecha we're introduced to the Avos, and this takes us all the way through till the end of Sefer Bereshis. So I'd like to say something in general about all the Avos and the role that they play in the history of the Jewish people. There's a very interesting thing that the Avos seem to disappear off the stage of the Chumash after a certain point. Avram Avinu, we know, he lived to be 175 years. After the Akedah, he was 137 years. 3 years later, he sent Eliezer to Haran to find a wife for Yitzchak. At that point, he was 140 years, and that's it. We don't hear anything more about Avram. So 140 till 175, 35 years of his life, we don't hear anything about him. What did he do for those 35 years? He must have done things that were significant, things that were important. Why does he disappear for the last 35 years of his life? Similarly, Yitzchak, Parshas tells us, we read that when Yitzchak was old, he gave the brachas. He wanted to give it to Yosef. Yaakov took them. How old was he at that point? So we know that Yitzchak lived to be 180 years old. At that point, Rashi says, he was 123 years old, because a person is supposed to worry about death 5 years before his parent, the age at which his parent died, and 5 years afterwards. For instance, if a person's father died at age 85, so when this person reaches 80, he has to start worrying. And when the first 5 years, then the next 5 years, when he reaches 90, he has to worry till then. Once he reaches 90, he can relax, he's clear. So Sarah died when she was 127. So Yitzchak, at that point, was 123, which was in the 5 years before his mother died. So he was concerned that he might die. Therefore, he decided to give the brachas. So he was 123 years old. When he died, he was 180 years old. So just do the math. That's 57 years. 57 years. The last 57 years of his life, we don't know anything about him. Except there's one pasuk in Parshas Vayeshev, after Yosef is sold, so the pasuk says, Vayefkaisa Aviv, which you would think the pasuk means that Yaakov was crying over Yosef, but Rashi brings that this refers to Yitzchak, the Yitzchak cried along with Yaakov. Okay, that's the only fleeting mention of Yitzchak after the point where he gives the brachas. 57 years of his life, we don't hear anything about him. On the other hand, Yaakov, we follow him all the way onto his deathbed, till the very last moment of his life. Why is this? Also, Avram, what was the greatness of Avram? Everyone knows. Avram was the one who recognized the Rabbi Shalom. He lived in a world of Avodah Zarah. He smashed the idols. He declared for the whole world that the Rabbi Shalom is God. There are no other gods. He allowed himself to be thrown into the Kivshan Ha'esh. He had to hide for, Rashi says, in Avos, in the 5th parak, all the Nisyonos. He was hiding out somewhere underground in a cave for 13 years. All these things, this is what Avram is. Avram is the one. Amudah Shel Olam, like the Rambam says, the pillar of the world who stood up against Avodah Zarah. None of this is in the Psukim. When we meet Avram, Parshas Lech Lecha, for the first time, except for the last Psukim of Noach, where he got married to Sarah, but other than that, when we meet Avram, he comes on the stage. He's 75 years old. What happened to all the things that he did before? Why don't they appear in the Torah? Why aren't they there? So I would like to offer a solution. There are two things when we talk about. There's something called Ma'isa Ava Simul Banim. Ma'isa Ava Simul Banim means that the things that the Avos do, those are indications for their descendants. So some Svarim explain this on like in a mystical sense that I'm not going to get into the mysticism, but there's a Pashto Pshat also. Ma'isa Ava Simul Banim, whatever they do, establishes a certain way of life, a certain midah for their children. Myself is similar banim. Now there are two different things. There's something called sipurei tzadikim, that if you hear stories about tzadikim, then you could learn from them a Musa Haskell. You see, this is how a tzaddik behaved, and you say, that's a wonderful thing, maybe I should also do that. And there's something else called Ma'isa Ava Simul Banim, which is more than Sipurei Tzadikim. Ma'isa Ava Simul Banim means that this is what our ancestors did, this is what our Avos did, and that was instilled in our nation, in our people, and therefore this is what I have to do because that's who I am. So there's a big difference between Sipurei Tzadikim. When you talk about it, you could say Sipurei Tzadikim about Aaron, let's say. Aaron was Oyev Shalom, Roidev Shalom. Fantastic. We read about this, we learn about this. So we should also be Roidev Shalom. Why? Because we should emulate a tzaddik. Very good. But there's no koyach that Aaron had. The Gemara says in Brachas, Tazayin and Beis, that Ein Koren Avos Ela Shloisha. The only ones who are great enough to be called Avos were Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The heads of the Shvatim did not have the power of being Avos. Only these three. First of all, they were for the whole people, and also because they were greater. The Gemara says, Hani Chashivi, they were greater. The Avos were the greatest, and they had the power through force of personality, through their tzitkas, through the way they brought up their families and their households. They had the power to instill in the fledgling ummah all the midas that they worked on. Avram instilled the midah of chesed, so this became, people like to use the language, the DNA of the Jewish people. I could say that, but I don't mean it in the medical sense. I mean it in the social sense. That the social body, the collective body of the Jewish people, has built into it chesed, and therefore we all are inclined to chesed. Because that's what Avraham Avinu instilled in us, not through any kind of scientific way, just through chinuch, and that chinuch was so powerful that it goes on till today. That called avos. Their work goes on for the entire duration of the Jewish people.
Isn't there Chazal Rachman by Shonim become a Chasadim?
Yeah, right. That's what we are. We are. These are things that these are midas that are instilled in all Jewish people. That means that now it doesn't have to be. You could be a ger. A ger could become could become part of Klal Yisrael. He attaches himself and becomes integrated to the collective of the Jewish people. And I don't know, for him, maybe his children, maybe him, after, let's say, a number of years, then all those midas apply to him as well. Because if he's part of the if it's part of the Jewish people, then those midas apply to him. Those midas are intrinsic in the Jewish people, and these were established by the Avos. On the other hand, Aaron's Roid of Shalom, that's not intrinsic to us that we are Roid of Shalom. In fact, the Jewish people are quite a fractious people, and it's not part of us to be pacific, and but because it's a wonderful midah, we look at it, we learn from it, we should emulate it. But that's all it is. What the Avos did is instilled in us. So the Torah. When did Avram Avinu become an Av? When did he become an Av? When did he get this koyach of Ma'isa Ava Simul Banim, that everything he did would be instilled in the Jewish people? He became an Av in the second pasuk of Lech Lecha. He said, Lech Lecha Avram, At this point, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you are in the process of building a great nation. So even though Yitzchak wasn't born yet, but the process began already, and everything that Avram did from this point on was Ma'asav v'Simul Banim. How long was Avram an Av? Avram was an Av until Yitzchak took over. Once Yitzchak took over, Avram was not an Av anymore. And Yitzchak was an Av until Yaakov took over. When Yaakov took over, then Yaakov became the Av. The mantle passed from Yitzchak to Yaakov, and therefore Yaakov was the Av, not Yitzchak. And you see this in the Psukim. It says, when Yaakov left, in the beginning of Kiseitzei, so Rabbi Shalom comes to him and says, Ani Elokei Avram Avicha Velokei Yitzchak. He doesn't say Yitzchak Avicha, he says Yitzchak. But when Yaakov is in Vayishlach, when he says, Vayomer Yaakov, Elokei Ovi Avram Velokei Ovi Yitzchak, then he refers to Yitzchak as Ovi already. Why? Because you cannot call the Ovis an Av until they complete their mission successfully. If they're only halfway into the mission, and who knows if they're going to succeed or fail, then you can't call them an Av. They have choices, they're Bechira. But once the mission is completed, once they pass the baton to the next Av, then you could look at the completeness of their term as being Av, and it was a success, therefore you could call them Av. So when Yaakov was leaving to go to Haran, Yitzchak was still in the process of being an Av. His term did not end until Yaakov got married and he established his own family, and he became the Av for the future generations. So at that point, it says Lakei Avram Lakei Yitzchak. You can't call him Lakei Avi Yitzchak because he was not an Av yet. But once he got married and he established his family and he produced the next generation and he continued the work of being the Av, then Yaakov became the Av, then Yitzchak was no longer Av, then you could call him Elkei Avi Yitzchak because his term as Av was completed. So Avram is an Av until Yitzchak becomes an Av. Yitzchak is an Av until Yaakov becomes an Av. But Yaakov is an Av all the way to the end of his life. He had no successors. En Kairin Av Elo L'Shloisha. He had no successors. So Yaakov is an Av all the way till the end of his life. And everything that he did, so whatever Avram did after Yitzchak became the Av, that was no longer Ma'asav v'Simul Banim. He wasn't an Av anymore. That's Sipurei Tzadikim. Whatever Yitzchak did after Yaakov became Av, then it's also not Ma'asav v'Simul Banim. It's just Sipurei Tzadikim. What Yaakov did all the way to the end of his life is Ma'asav v'Simul Banim because he had no successor. So he was the Av all the way to the end. When did Avram become an Av? We said he became an Av in here when he said Eschol Godel. So everything that he did before, when he allowed himself to be thrown into the Kivshan Eish, and when he declared the Achdus Rabbi, all these things, he did that as a tzaddik, not as an Av. So everything that he did before is Sipurei Tzadikim. Everything that he did from this point on, until Yitzchak supplanted him, is Ma'asav v'Simul Banim. The Torah does not want to tell you Sipurei Tzadikim about the Avos. The Torah only wants to tell you Ma'asav v'Simul Banim, to make a clear delineation. This is Ma'asav v'Simul Banim, because Ma'asav v'Simul Banim is a much greater mechayev. It puts much more responsibility on us. But you see a tzaddik did something, and you should learn from it. You did, you didn't, okay, but you should have fine. But if this is Ma'asav v'Simul Banim, that this is who you are, and this is built into your neshama, and this is built into Klal Yisrael, if you don't do that, so you're betraying yourself, you're not true to who you are. That is a much bigger responsibility to do Ma'asav v'Simul Banim. If Avram instilled in Klal Yisrael chesed, if you're not a Baal chesed, then you're a living lie, because you are supposed to be chesed, and you're not being true to yourself. So that is a much greater burden of responsibility on us when we read about the Avos in Torah Shebiksav, to see only Ma'asav v'Simul Banim. So it's very clear that anything it says about the Avos in Sefer Bereshis, anything it says about them is who we are. And therefore we need to be true to ourselves. Anything else that we know about other tzaddikim or about the Avos when they were not operating as Avos, those are Sipuri tzaddikim, and they're not as great and imperative as myself a similar banim. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. So, one of the ordeals, one of the nisyonos of Avram was that he came to Canaan and there was a famine and he had to go down to Mitzrayim. He had to go down to Egypt, and Sarah was beautiful and he was afraid that they would kill him and take her. So he told her, Imri Na'achayisiyat, to say that you are my sister. L'man yitav li bavurech, they should do good to me because of you. And I will live because of you. I will survive. What is my yitav li bavurech? Rashi says, Yitnu li matanas, that will give me presents. So this needs explanation. What is Avram needed presents? What is he saying? So I think this can be explained by what we spoke about last week. We spoke about the Gemara in Soita about chen, the idea of chen. Chen means that you see everything in a good light, and you overlook the flaws and the shortcomings. So one of the chinim that we spoke about was chen amekach haloikchai. When you buy something, till you buy it, you question it, you look at it, you compare this and that. Once you buy it, it's the best and it's the cheapest and it's perfect. Why? Because once you've invested in it, once you've bought it, you actually put out the money and you bought it, then all of a sudden it has chen, and you look at it in the favorable light, and you look away from the flaws. Avram is coming down to Mitzrayim, and he's telling them a story that this is my sister. Now, maybe they accept it, maybe they don't, but, a little suspicious. And he was worried that because of that suspicion, they may actually, turn against him. And maybe in the beginning they'll say, okay, she's your sister, but after a while they'll say, well, sister, it's not, they'll be suspicious. But if they give him matanas, that means they invest in his story. He comes down, this is my sister, and we give him matanas to be mechabed you. Once they give him matanas, they've bought into it. And once they've bought into it, any suspicion they may have will dissipate. That's what Avram wanted. He didn't care about the matanas. He wanted them to buy into his story. And once they buy into his story, he knows he'll be safe. They should give me matanas. Then I will survive because of you. If they give me matanas, then my survival is assured because they bought into it, and any suspicion they had will be allayed. That's what I say over here. Now, to go a little bit further. So anyway, Avram doesn't have any children. Avram and Sarah don't have any children. And the Rebbeinu Shalom promises him that he will have children. And meanwhile, Sarah is not becoming pregnant. She doesn't have children. So she has a shivcha, her name is Hagar, and she says to Avram, Hine atzrani Hashem miledes, Hashem stopped me from giving birth. Come to my shivcha, come to my handmaiden. Ulai bana mimeno. Maybe I will be able to have children through her. Now, I just want to say something. There is a certain topic which I will come back to again and again. In the 19th century, there was something called Bible criticism. Bible criticism was actually like an anti-Semitic movement. They wanted they wanted to tear down the credibility of the Torah. So they had all kinds of, I'm not going to get into them here, all kinds of arguments of saying this can't be, this, all different kind of things. And the Torah, they claimed, according to us, the Torah was written 1300 BC. They claimed that it was written maybe 700 or 1,000 years later. They said, this proof, that proof. We can go into them later, and I will. But at this point, I just want to point out one thing. There's somebody called Dr. Kenneth Kitchen, he's not alive anymore. He was a professor of Orientology in the University of Liverpool, and he wrote a book called On the Reliability of the Old Testament. And he was a very brilliant man, and he knew the ancient world extremely well. He knew all the ancient languages. He could read cuneiform. He could read hieroglyphics. He really had a great knowledge of the ancient world. So he pointed out, I'm just saying what he says, and it's really that this idea that you could have a child through your shifcha, it existed in the ancient world. In deep antiquity, it existed. In the Babylonian world, it existed. 1,000 years later, there was no such custom. Nobody. If the Torah was written 700 or 1,000 years later, how would anybody know to make up a custom which they didn't have any record of it? All the records were in cuneiform tablets. How did they, I don't know if they could read cuneiform, if they had the tablets, they were buried in archaeological sites. These were customs that were not known. And here the Torah talks about it. So, which tells you that the Torah also was written in ancient and in deep antiquity. It was written very, very, very long before they claim. Now, I'm not saying this is a proof that the Torah was written by Har Sinai or this, but certainly in that era, that's when it was written. That you could see from a number of I'll point them out as we go along, but that you could see from these type of customs. You see also when Avram tells Rabbi Shalom, I have no children, and Ben Meshach Beisi is going to inherit my how would you say Ben Meshach Beisi? My chief of staff is going to inherit. This was also an ancient custom, which was by the time, time of Ezra, it was all gone. So this was also something which is recorded on cuneiform tablets. So you see a number of things that the Torah, that this according to Dr. Kitchen, he says, when you go into the Bible, you enter the world of the ancient world. There are many things. Yosef was sold for 30 shekel. Like he says, at that time, that was the going price for a slave, was 30 shekel. These are things that could not be known to people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later. So there are many, many indications in the text that the Torah was written at the time it claims to have been written. As I just wanted to point this out. We'll come back to this from time to time, but it's an important thing to know. So here Sarah has this idea that according to ancient custom, if you have a slave and you give her to your husband and she has a child, it's considered your child. So that's what she does. So Vatikach Sarah Eshes Avram is Hagar, and he gave her to Avram, and Avram Vayovel Hagar, he came to her, and she became pregnant. Vatera she saw ki harasa, so became pregnant. Vatekel gvirta beinah. She made light. She lost respect for her mistress. She was insubordinate and disrespectful to Sarah. Sarah got angry. She said, Avram said to him, Chamasi olecha, I've been robbed here. When you davened for a child, you davened for yourself. You should have davened for both of us. And now Hagar is going to have your child, and I'm going to be left out? Yishvot Hashem beini beinecha, Hashem will judge between me and between you. So Avram says to Sarai, so what's her problem? Her problem is not that Hagar is being disrespectful. Her problem is that Hagar is pregnant and I'm not. So what did Avram tell her? Take your shivcha and do whatever you want. How does that respond to her problem? He didn't daven for her. How does that respond to that? But now Sarah persecuted her. I mean, she gave her a lot of hard work, and she ran away. But Tivrach P'nei, Hagar ran out into the fields. The Malach found her by Ein Mayim Bamidbar, an oasis, and he said to her, Vayomer, and he said, Hagar Shivcha Sarai, Eimizeh Ba'azvan Telechi. Hagar, the slave of Sarah, from where are you coming and where are you going? So Rashi says that he knew where she was coming from, he knew where she was going. It's just like breaking the ice. You want to talk to her, so you don't want to start right away to the thing. First, you like small talk. Say, hey, where are you coming from? What does he say? He says, just to have like, it's like opening the conversation. Then she said, "Vatomer," she said, "Mipnei Sarah Gevirti Anochi Barachas." I'm running away from Sarah, my mistress. Vayomer lo Malach Hashem, Shuvi el Gevirtach, go back. The next, Vayomer lo Malach Hashem, Harbe Arbe Azarech, I'll give you many children. V'lo Yisafim Rav, so innumerable. Vayomer lo Malach Hashem, Hinei Hara Vilad Ben Kros Shmo Yishmael. You're going to have a son, and his name should be Yishmael. 4 times it says Malach Hashem. When it said Malach Hashem, it said Vayomer, fine. Malach Hashem. Then it says again, Malach Hashem. Malach Hashem, 4 times. So Rashi says that each message that she was given, there was a separate malach. They didn't have one malach to carry all the messages. So this we can understand. He gave her a message, go back to your mistress. A message. The second malach told her, you're going to have many, many descendants. Another malach. The next malach tells her, you're pregnant and you're going to have a child, and his name is going to be Ishmael. Another message. But the first malach is only coming there to break the ice. Why do you need a separate malach for that? There should be, the malach that broke the ice should go on and tell her, go back. Why do we need a separate malach for that? So, I want to explain this without getting into too many of the details, but the Orach Chaim addresses the question of when Avram took Hagar, and he took her into his house, and he had relations with her, and she became pregnant. Was she still a slave, or was she automatically emancipated? See, this is a question. So I think that this will explain the psukim. Hagar thought, also Rashi says that she became pregnant from the first relations, which is really like almost a miracle. It's very extremely rare. So Hagar thought that because she was with Avram and she was carrying his child, that she's emancipated. So she's no longer the slave of Sarah. So Sarah cannot tell her what to do. So as soon as she became pregnant, she became insubordinate. You're not my boss. You're not my mistress. I am a free woman. That's what she thought. And Sarah thought that maybe she is right. Maybe she has a good cheshbon. So Sarah was upset with Avram. What are you doing? Look what you did. Hagar became pregnant. Now she's a free woman. She's disrespectful to me, and she's going to be the aim of Klal Yisrael. What have you done? So Avram answered her. Avram said to her, Parshas Lech Lecha. So Avram said to her, Hinei shivchasech biyodech. Don't worry about it. She is still your slave. Do whatever you want with her. So she started working very hard with her. Hagar didn't accept this. What do you mean? You're not my mistress. So she ran away. So the first malach came to her and said, Hagar Shivcha Sarai, where are you coming from? This was the message. Hagar shivcha Sarai, you are not a free woman. You are the slave of Sarah. That was the message. The rest of it was, yeah, where are you coming from? Yeah, we're starting a conversation. But that was the message of the Malach. You are the slave of Sarah. And she said, but she said, where you coming from? They Sarai gevirti anochi barachas. She accepted the message of the Malach. The Malach told her that you are a shivcha. So she said, where am I coming from? I'm running away from Sarah, my mistress. So the second Malach told her, you must return. The third Malach told her, you're going to have many descendants. Each Malach is giving her a different message. The first Malach gave her a message, you are wrong. Just because you became pregnant from Avram, and just because you became Rabbi Rishayna, you became pregnant, it doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that you're free. You're not free. You're still Sarah Shevcha. Okay. I want to conclude with one thing. Here it is. So, afterwards, there was a malchama, there was a war, and let me see if I can find it. If not, I'll tell you by heart. So there was a war between the kings of Canaan and the kings of Bavel. And the kings that they rebelled, they didn't pay tribute. The kings of Bavel came, and Lot was living in Sodom at the time. They abducted Lot and the entire city of Sodom, all the people, and with all their property. They abducted and carrying them off back to Bavel. So Vayavay Palat, we'll get into that Palat now, but the Palat came, and he told Avram what happened, and Avram chased after them, and he fought with them, and he rescued the people and all the property. So the Melech Sodom said to Avram, "Ten li hanefesh v'arechush kachlach." Give me back my people, and you could take all the wealth. Which is very telling, because he understood that true wealth is people, not money. You can have a country like Japan, which has hardly any natural resources, but has a very industrious people, which makes them a rich country. So the Melech Sodom understood that the most important thing for the future prosperity of Sodom is not the bags of gold and silver, but it's the people of Sodom who are good workers. Okay, just a side point. So Avram says to the Melech Sodom, "Harimaisi yodei, I don't want anything. I don't want to take anything of yours." Like I should not say, "Ani asharti as Avram," that you made me rich. Bilodai rak asher ochlo anorim, except bilodai rak. That lashon rak asher ochlo anorim. Only what he came on Eshkol Mamre, his people, his soldiers that went along, a couple of hundred of them. And they had to eat. So whatever they had to eat, you can reimburse me. You can, from the booty, from the spoils, you can reimburse me. Let them take their portion. Normally you go fight, the soldiers get a portion. Let them take a portion. I don't want a portion. You shouldn't say that you made me rich. So first of all, I don't want anything, not a shoelace, nothing. So, first of all, some of Harshim ask that you see Avram didn't have any hesitation of taking matanas from Paroi, but I think what we said before addressed that, because that wasn't for himself, it was just for his safety, to make sure that to allay the suspicions. So we're not going to talk about that. But why didn't he want to take anything? Let's say Avram would have built him a house. Build a house. So he said, okay, now I want to pay you for the house. He says, no, don't pay me for the house. I don't want you to say you made me rich. No, that doesn't make sense. You built him a house, you earned the money, you're entitled to get it. So over here, he went and he fought and he recovered the wealth. He's entitled to be paid for that. This is a job. Why shouldn't he get paid for that? Why is that called that you can hire mercenaries to do that and you pay them? He was not obligated to do that. He went and recovered them, and the money and the people. So pay him. Why can't you pay him? Let's say, fine, I don't want to take money. But there's a certain concept which appears in the Gemara in Chulin, Daf Kuf Lamed Aleph, in Zvachim Daf Pei, other places. It's called Mishtar Shalei. That if I save money, it's as if I got money. If the tax collector came to my house and took my meiser for my taxes, so then I have to reimburse meiser, because since I don't have to give the meiser, so it's as if I sold the meiser. It's called ishtar shlei. I benefited by saving money. Avram would have had to pay his people, and by them taking a part of the spoils, then Avram saved a lot of money, much more than a shoelace. Why didn't he have a problem with that? All his people, v'chelik ha'anoshim, they all went. They weren't all, maybe they're all such tzaddikim, they do l'shem shmayim, but, Pashat, they needed to be paid. They went and they fought, they needed to be paid. Why wasn't that a problem? There was much more money in Avram's pocket now, because those people are taking money from the spoils. So Avram is becoming rich because of the Melch Sadaim. Why didn't I have a problem with that? So I think the pshat's like this. Avram says, Bilodai. There's a difference between a soldier and a general regarding the spoils of war. A soldier is entitled to a share in the spoils of war. He's like a laborer. He works, he has a job, he did his job, he's entitled to get paid. He punched his clock, he went, he did, he gets paid. A general doesn't get paid for the time he put in. A general gets paid for the victory. You won, you're entitled to a share. Not for how much time I spent, how much shoe leather I used up. For you're a general, you were victorious, you're entitled to a share. The soldiers, on the other hand, is not for the result. Of course, if there's not going to be a victory, they may end up being dead and they won't get anything. But the reason why they're getting a share in the spoils is because they worked. And because of the work, they're laborers, they need to get paid for that. So Avram says that you're telling me that I should take money. Why? Because I was the victor. Because I had a great victory here. Belodai. What does the word Belodai mean? The word Belodai appears once more in Parshas Miketz, when Paroi tells Yosef, I want you to interpret my dream because I heard that you know how to interpret dreams. So Yosef says, Belodai, I'm going to look for it now. He says, Belodai, it's not from me. It's coming from Hashem. It's not that I have this great talent of interpreting dreams. It's coming from Hashem. So he says over here also, I had a victory. There was quite a shloika derech ateva victory. This was not a normal thing. This came Belodai. It wasn't me. It came from Hashem. I'm not entitled to anything. If you give me anything, it's a gift. I don't want your gifts. But Masha Echla and Arim, regardless of it was Al Derech HaTeva, Shlo Derech HaTeva, but my men, they worked, they went, they walked, they put in the time. They are entitled to a share. They are definitely entitled to a share. Pay them what they deserve. You want to pay me because I was victorious? Belodai, it didn't come from me. That came from the Rebbeinu Shalom. I don't deserve anything. Thank you very much. I hope to see you all again next week. And we'll do Parshas Vayera. Thank you.